Here we go. So let's go ahead for centering today. We're going to get started all the way down on your back. So it's that reclined Shavasana pose. And you have a few options once you get there. All the way down, either with your feet on the floor, if that's better for your low back, and your knees coming maybe to touch, if that is helpful for your hips as well. If it's comfortable for you, maybe you go ahead and recline all the way down, extending your legs long. Taking just a few minutes to adjust the body parts. So pulling the shoulders down from the ears, shoulder blades coming down the back. Maybe wiggling fingers, toes, knees, and ankles just a little bit to get the wiggles out. And then eventually bringing stillness to the body. And settling in. Take a nice long full inhale through your nose. See if you can get your belly to expand and balloon up towards the sky. And then an open mouth exhale. Let all the air go and all of the balloon belly deflate. And then bring a light seal to the lips if that's available for you today. And take lengthened inhales through the nose. And exhales through the nose. If it's comfortable for you, close your eyes to help you bring just a little bit more focus and attention to your body rather than to what you see in your environment. Settling in, allowing whatever was happening before this during your day today to melt away. It'll be there when we're done. But for now, we're going to focus just right here on the shapes that we're going to make for the next hour. Our focus pose today is plank pose, which means that we're going to have quite a bit of attention on our hands and wrists. Right now, I invite you, as you inhale, with your mind, in your imagination, direct all that fresh, new air and oxygen to your wrists and hands. If it's available to you, maybe you assign a color to your air so that as the air swirls in through the nose, fills the lungs, expands out past the lungs, and then you can visualize it spreading through the arms, down to the wrists and hands, following that color. And then on the exhale, think about releasing all the used air and releasing just a little bit of tension from the body. Take about 1 to 2 more cycles of breath. And then on your next inhale, start to bring your legs straight down from the hips if they've been extended out to the sides at all, and flex your feet, pressing energy out through the heels. So your heels might even be lifting up off the mat as you pull the toes towards your kneecaps. On your next inhale, lift the arms up towards the sky, flexing the wrists. And start to feel that engagement of pulling the shoulders down towards the mat. Maybe even thinking about expanding the shoulder blades out to the sides. So now here you're already in a plank pose, starting to warm up those muscles. Take an inhale. And then as you exhale, allow those arms to come all the way overhead. And now take a nice long full body stretch. Reach the toes, reach the fingers. And exhale and release. I'm going to slide that right heel over to the right edge of your mat. And then slide the left heel over to either meet the right, or if it's available to you, you cross the left ankle over the right ankle. And then grab opposite elbows above your head if that's available in your shoulders. It might not be for everyone, and if it's not, then you can just grasp hands, or maybe you allow your arms to stay extended. Now, if you're feeling enough of an opening, of a stretch along that IT band on the left side, maybe even up into the hip and obliques, you're going to stay right where you are. If you feel like you could use just a little bit more sensation, press into the floor with your hands by your head and shift your shoulders over to the right. So now we are making a banana shape, actually banana asana, with the heels and the shoulders over to the right, the hips staying closer to the left. Take a few breaths here, really thinking about each inhale, opening the side body, all the spaces between the ribs on the left side, and then feeling that opening across the hip, down the IT band, and over to the ankle on the left side. And then on your next inhale, shifting the shoulders back to center, uncrossing the ankles, moving the left ankle all the way over to the left side of the mat. Right ankle can slide over and meet it, or maybe it crosses over the left ankle. You can stay right where you are. If you feel like a little bit more space is available, maybe you want to shift the shoulders over towards the left. And then again, if you're grasping elbows, this time try to grasp opposite hand on top, and then lower the forearms over the head. Breathing here again. As you do, think about the left toes. You're trying to keep that left foot straight so that the toes are pointing straight up to the ceiling. Last breath here. And release. Inhaling, bringing shoulders back to center, uncrossing the ankles, and then this time, one knee at a time, start to pull the thighs in towards the chest. You can have your hands either on the fronts of the shins or maybe on the backs of the thighs, and just start to draw circles with the knees on the ceiling, giving a nice massage to that pelvis, the low back, the sacral area, and then reverse the circles. And eventually coming back to center, pulling those knees in, and then start to just rock and roll the length of your spine, rolling like a ball, back and forth, getting a nice massage along the length of your spine, eventually getting enough momentum to come all the way up to seated. From seated, if you want, you can swing your legs around to one side or the other, or roll right over your ankles, up over the knees, and come into tabletop so that the knees are directly under the hips, hands and wrists are directly under the shoulders, and start to set up the hands like we've been covering the last few weeks. So wrist creases facing the top of the mat, plugging in the base knuckle of each finger, spreading the fingers wide, and then particularly paying attention to pressing that pointer finger and that thumb down. Take an inhale. As you do, lift the chin, lift the tail, let the belly sway. And then as you exhale, lift the back up towards the ceiling, tucking the chin and the tail together underneath you. And then inhale back towards center. Now, if you're feeling enough sensation in your forearms and your wrists right here, you're going to stay right there. If you feel like you could use a little bit more sensation to open up the forearms and wrists, you're going to turn your fingers out to point to the edges of your mat on the sides, or maybe pointing towards the back corners, or flipped all the way around so that your fingertips are pointing towards your knees. Tuck your toes into the mat. Take an inhale, and then as you exhale, notice if you have just a little bit of space to start to shift your hips back and really create more length along that forearm between the elbow and the wrist. And you can do the same thing if your wrists are pointed out to the sides. You're going to probably get a little bit less sensation, and that's okay. And then from there, you're going to walk those hands all the way back towards your knees, and notice what it feels like if you try to shift your hips back and land your seat on your heels. So now you're opening up the wrists and opening up the bottoms of the feet. That we will use a lot of the foot engagement again as we move through that focus plank pose. Take an inhale, lift up, walk those hands forward, bring them back to pointing straight ahead. Untuck the toes, lower the toes down to the mat, and then as you exhale, start to lower the seat towards your heels. You can keep the knees closer together, or if it's better for you, bring the knees out to the side. Exhale, lower the forehead all the way down to the mat. Now, as we go through plank pose, it's not necessarily a good fit for everybody to hold plank for a long time. So I want you to remember that child's pose is always an option at any time you need a break. One more breath here. And then inhale, lift the gaze, pull yourself up and forward, and come back up into tabletop. Another option that I want to cover right now before we get started is if your wrists tend to be a weak link, I want you to make a fist, and you can plug your fists either with the fists facing each other or with the fists facing the knees instead of the flat hand. Another option as we move through is to come down to forearm plank and remove the hands and wrists altogether. So I'll try to cue some of those as we go through, but just remember that for your body, those might be variations. Now, coming into our first modified plank pose, think about those fingers again. You're going to just start to create just a little bit of a claw shape with your fingers so that the bottom knuckle of each finger and the fingertips are really active and pressing into the mat. Elbow creases facing each other. Pull those shoulder blades down towards your waist, and then think about spreading your shoulder blades out to the sides like they're butterfly wings. Stepping your knees back a few inches so that as you shift your hips forward, you are making a straight line from your knees, past your hips, past your shoulders, and out the crown of your head in modified plank. We're going to just hold here for about one breath. And then inhale, bring that right hand to the center. Pivot on your right knee, to move open to the left side. So now you're opening up all along that left side body. You can inhale, reach that left hand up towards the ceiling. Or perhaps maybe you want to extend that left arm up over the ear. You can stay there, or maybe you lift the left foot, flexing the ankle, and hold here in this modified side plank. Exhale, look down to the floor, release that left hand and left foot. Bring the left knee to the center, left hand to the center, pivot on that left knee, open all the way up to the right. And inhale if you choose, lifting that right arm up to the ceiling. As you do, you're going to avoid dumping into that left shoulder, so keep that space between the ear and the shoulder. From there, if you want, you can extend that right arm long over the ear, gazing up towards the ceiling underneath that upper arm. And again, if you choose, maybe you bring that right foot up to about hip height, flexing the foot. Exhale, look down to the mat, lower the hand, lower the foot. And then this time, extending both legs back, coming just for a temporary plank pose before you step the feet forward, up into forward fold on an exhale. Holding here for about 2 cycles of breath, releasing all the tension out of the back of the neck, letting the head hang heavy. Soft bend in the knees, they're not locked out. And then on your next natural inhale, hands into the shins, extend the spine long, and then exhale and fold. Press into your feet. Inhale, lift the torso up and reach the arms up, either towards your hips or bring the hands to heart center. Take nice long full inhales and exhales here. You can close your eyes if that would be comfortable for you, or find a gaze point about 18 to 24 inches in front of you on the floor. Now, I'm going to ask you, before we get started, to envision your shoulder blades back behind you. I want you to picture each shoulder blade as if it's a wing, and you're going to open those wings out to the side. Now, your arms are going to stay straight ahead, but you're opening your shoulder blades out to the side, so you're protracting them. That's the movement that I want you to think about when we come into the plank down on the floor. You're really pulling that upper back wide out to the side. Find your firm foundation. So feeling the ball of the foot, baby toe and big toe, finding the plugging in the base of the heel, stacking the knees over the ankles, engaging the quadriceps, stacking the hips over the knees, engaging that bottom rib to touch the top of the hips, lifting the sternum so the shoulders melt down the back, and then the crown of the head reaches towards the ceiling. Full engagement. Now inhale, you're going to lift your arms straight up in front of you. So your feet are firmly flexed, your hands are firmly flexed, and your hands are about shoulder distance apart. Spread those butterfly wings apart with your shoulder blades. Feel all that engagement. Particularly notice that you're keeping that bottom rib glued towards your top of your pelvis. All of this movement is the same sensation that we're going to want to try and feel when we're down on the floor in plank pose. Now take an inhale, lift the hands up towards the ceiling, bring them together, and look up towards your hands if your neck is happy with that. And then maybe just a baby back bend, pressing those hips forward. Exhale, bring the hands to heart center as you hinge forward from the hips, lower down into forward fold. Inhale, half fold, and here we're going to go through our first Phalakasana, which is plank pose. So engaging the front of that ankle that we've been focused on also the last few weeks. Keeping that engagement, soften the knees, bring the hands down to the floor, wide like starfish, and then step your feet all the way towards the back of your mat. Plugging in the base knuckle of each finger and the fingertip. If you choose, we're going to hold our first plank for a few cycles of breath. So if you want, you can lower down to your knees. Otherwise, from the feet towards the top, your balls of your feet are plugged into the floor. You can wiggle your toes if you need to. Your heels, all the energy is pushing out through those heels. They're pulling towards the wall behind you. Your quadriceps are engaged to your femur, just like we did in mountain pose. Core is engaged, pulling that bottom rib towards the top of the hip. And your butterfly wings are broad across your back. Elbow creases facing each other. Tailbone is reaching down towards the heels. One more breath here with the gaze about 2 to 4 inches in front of your hands. Nice. Now, release that right foot. Maybe you let it hover. And then inhale, pull the right knee up towards the right elbow. And then step the right foot to where your right hand was. Coming right up into low lunge. We've been focused quite a bit the last couple weeks on our pelvis. So let's take a peek at what's happening there. You're wanting to lift the left side of the pelvis up so that your pelvis is parallel from left to right, rather than dumping into it and allowing that left hip to sway down. You can have those fists plugged into the floor if that's comfortable for you. And then we're going to take one more full breath here, thinking about pulling the right heel towards the left toes towards the right heel. Inhale to lift the hips, and then pivot that back foot down so it's pointing out at about 10 o'clock on the clock face. Inhale the hands to the hips, float the torso up, and then exhale, lowering your hips as you lunge into your front knee for warrior one. Let's go over a couple of those cues, pulling back on the right hip, forward on the left hip, right heel pulling towards the left foot pulling towards the right foot. So you're creating that scissor sensation with your inner thighs as the tailbone reaches down towards the floor. And again, bottom rib towards the top of the pelvis. Sternum lifting towards the ceiling. And if you choose, maybe you reach the arms up and gaze towards the fingers. Hold for one more cycle of breath. Exhale the hands towards heart center. Pivot on the back foot. Take an inhale. Step the left foot up to meet the right foot. Bending the knees, coming right into fierce pose that we covered last week. Knees stay behind the toes. If you have the legs together, you're squeezing the inner thighs together as if they're one leg. If it's more comfortable for you, you can have the feet hip width distance apart. Tailbone reaching down towards the floor, core is engaged, and then hands at heart center helps to keep that sternum lifted. Take one more breath here. And then exhale, reach over to the right and extend your arms long, opening up the arms. Take one more breath here. And then exhale the hands back towards heart center. Now you can stay right here, or maybe you hinge from the hips and come into a twisted chair, bringing the outside of the left elbow to the outside of the right knee. Now, if you're coming into twisted chair, you still want those knees to stay even. So you're pulling back on the left hip and keeping the knees behind the toes. Start to release the left foot. Take an inhale, step all the way back, coming into twisted lunge on your exhale. Now, if you are in your extended twist, you're just going to lower your hands down to frame your feet and step that left foot back. From there, you can stay in lunge or come into your version of a twist. Last breath here. Exhale, release the hands inside the right foot, coming into lizard pose. Full inhale and exhale. Now in this runner's lunge or lizard pose, if you choose, you have the option of releasing your left knee down to the floor. That's up to you. Otherwise, you're going to keep that left knee lifted. And if you'd like to add just a little bit more of a wrist opener, again, to this pose, you're going to slide your hands back so that they are about parallel with your right heel. And then, depending on what level of sensation you're feeling, maybe you start to bend those elbows and rest your torso on the shelf of your upper arms, feeling an opening along the forearm and wrist. Inhale to push the floor away, lift the hips to create space, and then you're going to start to pivot over to the left side, walking your hands in a yogi walk along the long side of your mat. Your feet are pointing, toes are pointing slightly out towards the corners of your mat, pressing into the heels and the baby toe and ball mound of the foot. Take an inhale to extend that spine long, and then exhale, wide-legged forward fold. Nice, long, full lengthen inhales and exhales here. And you're welcome to stay right here. If you would like to add a little bit of a variation to this, you can start to walk your hands back again. This time you're lining your fingers up with, again, the backs of the heels, and then pressing those palms down. So now again, you're creating that shelf with the upper arm and opening up the wrist and the forearm. On an exhale, start to bend into the knees. On an inhale, float the torso up so you can land your elbows on your knees. We're going to come into goddess pose, which is kind of like a wide-legged chair pose. So you might need to walk your feet a little bit closer together. You're welcome to hang out right here if you choose. Otherwise, inhale and float the torso up. As you exhale, you're lowering your tailbone and your pelvis towards the floor as your knees stay open over your toes. So knees are tracking the same direction as the toes and the ankles. Engaging that core, lowering the tailbone, and firing up the quadriceps, hamstrings, and glutes. Sternum is lifted, and if you choose, inhale, lift the arms to about shoulder height, flexed wrists, and take one more breath here. Fully exhale. And then inhale and extend the legs. We're going to take the left foot and turn it so that it is outer edges parallel to the short edge of the mat. And then your right foot is going to pivot so that the toes are pointing to the short edge of the mat. Bring your fingertips just above the outside of your knee. Fire up that muscle that you feel there. So that is the engaged, protecting your knee. And then exhale, start to bend that front knee as you lower the torso and land your forearm or your elbow on your right thigh. You're welcome to stay right here, or you can inhale, extend that left arm up to the ceiling. You can stay there, or maybe you extend that left arm over the ear. So you're coming into a variation of extended side angle, opening up all the spaces between the armpit, the ribs, the hip, down to the ankle on the left side. If you choose to go just a little bit deeper, you're going to bring the right hand inside the right ankle. Taking one more breath here. And then exhale, bring your gaze down to the floor as you bring your left hand inside that right foot. Pivot to the ball of the back foot. We're going to slide that right foot all the way back to meet the left foot, and then move your left hand towards the center of your mat. You can lower your left knee. As you do, pivot so that you are opening up to the long edge of your mat. You can keep that left knee down, or if you choose, on an inhale, press in to your left hand and slide the left hand underneath, or the left foot underneath the right. You can inhale and reach the right arm to the ceiling, side plank. Exhale, bring your gaze down to your left hand, bring the right hand down to meet it, and hold here in full plank. Think of all those cues, heel pressing to the wall behind you, kneecaps pulling up so that the quadriceps are engaged to the femur, pulling the hips towards the bottom rib, tailbone energetically pulling towards your heels, opening up your butterfly wings on your back, shoulder blades open. Take an inhale here. As you exhale, lower down the forearms into forearm plank. One cycle of breath here. And then we're going to move into dolphin, which we haven't done for a few weeks. We did this when we covered our downward facing dog. So on an inhale, start to walk your hands back. As you exhale, lift the hips. Maybe you walk your feet forward into dolphin pose. Now again, your shoulder blades are expanding, protracting out to the sides. Inhale to lift your gaze towards your hands. Exhale, downward facing dog. Full cycle of breath in and out. And then inhale. Start to release that right foot away from the floor. You can just keep it kickstand, or you can bring it up to hip height, or maybe you extend it all the way up towards the ceiling. On an exhale, whichever level you're at with the foot, you're going to pull it all the way through to the center of your mat. And then bring those hands closer to the foot. So now you can kickstand the left foot slightly. You can stay there, or you can float that foot up to about hip height. And if you choose, you can release the hands away from the floor, bringing those hands out either into airplane or straight ahead of you into warrior three. Core is engaged. Left heel, energy pushing out through it. Energy pushing out through your hands. Take one more breath. And then exhale, step the left foot down to meet the right. and come to the top of your mat. Hands can meet together at heart center and bring your feet about hip width distance apart. Close your eyes and feel your breath. Exhale to release the hands, blink the eyes open. Engage the front of the ankles. Stack the knees over the ankles, pull the kneecaps up towards the hip crease so that you can really feel the engagement of the quadriceps, hamstrings, and glutes. Pull the bottom rib to the top of the hip. Lift the sternum. Protract your butterfly wings, open up that back, and then lift the arms, shoulder height, in standing plank. Feel all that muscle engagement. Inhale to extend the arms all the way up, either bringing those hands together like we did before or cactusing the arms. Slight anterior tilt of the pelvis forward as you lift the sternum to the sky, shoulders out of the ears. Inhale to reach the arms up. Exhale to bring the hands to heart center, hinge from the hips, and lower down into forward fold. Inhale and extend the spine, half fold. And then exhale, deep bend in the knees, lower the hands to the mat, and then step those feet all the way to the back. Either with the knees off or knees on the floor for plank pose. We're going to hold here again for a few cycles of breath. Now remember, if you choose, you can come to your fists, you can come to your forearms, you can have knees on or off the mat. Finding the engagement with your hands, creating that bit of a suction cup, feeling the elbows, elbow creases facing each other, plugging the upper arm bone into the shoulder socket, pulling back on that, feeling the tailbone reaching for the heels, heels reaching for the wall behind you. One last breath. And then lifting the left foot. Take an inhale here. On an exhale, pull the left knee up to the left elbow, and then step the left foot to the left hand. Holding here. And again, if you choose, the right knee can come down to the mat. Now, check out that pelvis. Make sure that that left hip is pulled up and engaged. Last breath in lunge pose. Inhale to lift the hips slightly so you can step in and pivot the right foot out at about 2 o'clock on the clock face. Inhale, hands to the hips, lift the torso up. Exhale, lunge into the front knee as you lower the tailbone down towards the floor. Bringing that right hip forward, left hip back. Engaging the fronts of the ankles and adjusting the angle on your right foot to make it comfortable for you. You're welcome to stay here, or hands to heart center, or hands to the ceiling. Warrior one, Virabhadrasana 1. Next exhale, hands come to the heart, come to the ball mound of the right foot, and then inhale, push off the back foot, stepping forward, and then exhale, lowering the seat down, bending the knees, fierce pose. Think about that slight anterior tilt of the pelvis, bringing it up so that the tailbone can energetically pull down towards the floor and knees stay back behind the toes. Take about 2 more cycles of breath here, really firing up those quadriceps. Nice. Now, on your next inhale, we're going to start a twist over to the left. As you exhale, maybe you extend those arms, flying your wings. You can stay here, or you can bring those hands back to heart center, hinge forward, and as you exhale, come into twisted, fierce pose. But pay attention to what's happening in your ankles and knees. You want that right hip staying in alignment, so the knees also stay in alignment. You don't want that right hip shooting forward and the knee coming forward. Take another breath, lift that right foot, Exhale, step back into twisted lunge to the left. Hold for a breath. And then exhale, hands come inside the left foot. You can keep the right knee off the floor or lower it down into whichever version of lizard pose you prefer. We'll hold here for a few cycles of breath. And as we did on the other side, if you'd like to bring in a little bit more wrist and forearm openers, you're going to slide those fingertips back to be about parallel to the left heel. And then, if you want, on an exhale, create a shelf with your upper arms, lower the torso down, and open up the wrist. Inhale to push that up. Lift the hips so you have space. And exhale, yogi walk to the long edge of your mat, bringing the toes out to face the corners again, heels coming slightly towards each other. And then exhale, forward fold. Release tension out of the spine, out of the neck, out of the shoulders. Maybe you nod the head yes, maybe you shake it no, and breathe. Inhale the half lift, pressing into the feet. This time, flip the hands around. Now, it might not be for everyone. So if we do this and you're like, doesn't feel good, then you're going to go back. Otherwise, this time walking those palms back this time until the palms are about parallel with the heels. And then as you exhale, maybe you bend the elbows, lowering the forehead or crown of the head towards the floor. Inhale to half lift, walk those hands forward. Exhale, start bending into the knees. Coming back into that goddess pose. So maybe you walk the heels or the feet a little bit closer to each other. And then inhale to lift the elbows to the thighs. Remembering that you are welcome to stay right here. Or inhale, lift up the torso. Lengthen that spine. So the sternum is lifted towards the chin, crown of the head lifting towards the ceiling. So all of that upper body is floating up as you firmly ground into your feet, and the lower body is grounding down into your lunge. Knees tracking over the ankles and the toes. Core is engaged. Hands can stay here, or if you choose, hands come straight out from the shoulders, protracting that upper back, really opening up your butterfly wings. Hold just for one more cycle of breath. And then inhale, extend the legs and lower the arms. This time your right foot, the outer edge of the foot is going to be parallel to the short edge of the mat. Left foot is going to pivot so the toes are pointing to the short edge of the mat. Keeping that pelvis open to the long edge of the mat and engaging the muscle right above that knee. On an exhale, starting to lunge into your front knee, and maybe you lower the elbow or the forearm down to the thigh. You're welcome to stay right here in this version of extended side angle, or you can inhale and reach the right arm up towards the ceiling. Maybe the gaze comes to the hand and the thumb is directly over the mouth. Take another breath here. As you exhale, that right arm extends long over the ear. Now you're welcome to stay here or exhale to lower that left hand inside the left foot. Extended side angle for one more breath. And then exhale, bring the gaze to the floor as you swing that right hand down inside the left foot, and then lower your right knee down to the floor. You're going to swing this left leg all the way back behind you. Maybe you pivot on your right knee with the foot coming out back behind you, and you come into a modified side plank. Maybe you press in to your left foot and right hand to slide that right foot underneath the left and come into full side plank. Holding here for one more breath. And then exhale, Left hand comes down, pivot on the balls of your feet. So you are coming right back in to that full plank pose. Think of all those cues. What's happening in your feet, your heels, your knees, quadriceps. Where's your belly button? What's happening with your shoulder blades? What's happening with your wrists and hands? Last breath here. And then exhale, lower to your elbows to forearm plank. Remembering that knees down are always an option. On an inhale, sliding your elbows back, exhale to lift the hips, walk the feet in, dolphin pose. Take an inhale to prepare, lift the gaze, exhale, push up to downward facing dog. Hold and breathe. Think about all of that spine lengthening up towards the ceiling. Shoulders out of the ears. Core engaged. Now, inhale, you're going to just start to release that left foot. Maybe it hovers, maybe it lifts up to the hips, maybe you point the left toes all the way up to the ceiling. And then as you exhale, pull that knee forward so you can step the left foot to the center of your mat. Inhale, float forward. So now the right toes are hovering. You can stay right here, or you can float the foot up to about hip height. You can keep your hands down, or you can inhale and float the torso up, bringing those arms alongside of you into airplane pose, energy pressing out through the right heel, or arms extended in front of you into warrior three. Holding for one more cycle of breath. And then exhale, step the right foot forward, landing it at the top of your mat. And let's take an inhale, circle the arms up. Exhale, bring the hands down through heart center, hinge forward from the hips, forward fold. Inhale and half lift. Exhale, bend the knees, plant the hands, and then step the feet all the way to the back, either full plank or lowering the knees into modified plank. Take one more breath here. Last plank pose. And then exhale, downward facing dog. Bringing your gaze to the middle of your mat. You're going to inhale and either step or soften your knees and take a small hop to the middle of your mat with the toes coming off the edges. On an inhale, lift up, rest the elbows on the thighs, holding right here in this version of a squat, or taking an inhale to bring the hands to heart center, and as you exhale, lowering the seat all the way down towards your heels if Malasana or garland pose is appropriate for you today. Take another 2 cycles of breath here. Exhale to release the hands in front of you. Inhale to push off the feet, and then exhale into forward fold. Now you can hang out in forward fold. You can lower your knees and come to tabletop, or you can stay in forward fold to set up your hands and come to your tippy toes. Hands are set up just like in plank pose that we've just been covering. As you exhale, you shift forward to land the knees and shins along the back of the upper arms. Gaze coming about 4 to 6 inches in front of your hands, and then really round up your back, pulling the core in as if you're an angry cat. If you're in tabletop, you can cycle through cat and cow. If you're in this crow pose prep, you can hang out here, or maybe you play around with releasing one set of toes or the other set of toes. Or maybe this week you want to try releasing both sets of toes with the core pulled in. Whichever variation you're choosing, we'll just do one more cycle of breath. And then exhale. If you're in crow prep, push the knees off, and then exhale, lower the knees down towards the floor. Keeping your left hand to the center of the mat, left knee to the center of the mat. On an inhale, pivot, open to the long edge of your mat, extending that right leg long, and then inhaling to lift the torso up. Your right outer edge of your right foot is plugged down into the mat. Take an inhale, extend the arms long. On an exhale, reach that right arm down the right leg as you lift the left hand up to the ceiling, and then side bend over to your right in gate pose. Take 2 full cycles of breath here. Inhale to lift up, and then exhale, just teeter-totter over, so now your left hand lands down on the center of the mat again. Coming into a modified side plank. You can hang out right here, or if you want, you can float that right foot up, really flexing the right foot. And if you'd like to add on one more little piece, you can reach back behind you, grab the front of the right ankle, kick the right ankle into the right hand as you pull the right hand into the ankle, opening up the hip flexor. Last breath here. And then exhale, gently, slowly release. Bring that right knee down. Push up off from the left hand and come to a stand on your knees. Left leg extends out long. Outer edge of the left foot down, plugged into the floor. And then from here, extending both arms out long, lifting the sternum, lowering the shoulders and shoulder blades down. Take an inhale. As you exhale, you're lowering the left hand down to the left leg, reaching the right arm up, and then pulling out of the hip and armpit to exhale, side bend over to the left. Feel the opening all along the right side of the body. Inhale to lift up. Exhale, teeter-totter. This time the right hand comes down, left arm reaches up, and you're welcome to stay right here in this version of modified plank. Next variation is to float that left foot up. Next variation, bringing that knee up and in so you can grasp the front of the ankle and then kick the ankle into the hand, hand into the ankle, opening up the left hip flexor. Last breath. And then exhale, gently, slowly release, and come back up. Swinging your legs around to either side, doesn't matter which one, to come to a seat down on your mat. Swinging those legs around out in front of you, we're going to keep that left leg extended. Right knee comes up, and then allow it to fall open to the right side. And then the right foot comes inside the left inner thigh any amount. Bring your hands alongside your hips. Inhale to float the hips and then shoot that left leg forward. So now automatically your torso is pointing closer towards your right knee. Left hand can either be on the left thigh or shin, or maybe inside that. Again, sternum towards the right knee. On an inhale, you're going to lift the right arm up. Maybe you hang out right here, or maybe you exhale and side bend over that left leg. Maybe if you have enough space, you bring that left elbow down inside the thigh and then really extend that right arm long. Now, if you're able to keep that chest open towards the side and you're not falling over with the right shoulder across the chest, if you can keep that open, maybe you see about finding the left big toe with your fingertips. Hold here and breathe. On your next inhale, lifting up, bringing it back to center on the exhale. Right knee comes up and then extends long. Left knee slides up and in, and then allow that knee to externally rotate at the hip. Hands alongside the hips, float them up, and then exhale to shoot that right leg forward.
Now your sternum is coming closer to the left knee. Right hand is somewhere along the leg or inside of it. And then inhale, float up your left hand. Now you're going to stay at whatever level your body is telling you is enough for you. So keeping, again, you're wanting to keep that chest open towards the left knee. That's your gauge to tell you how far down to come. So as you exhale, as long as you're keeping that left shoulder open and above the right shoulder, and your body's telling you it's comfortable and okay to keep going, maybe you reach that right elbow down towards the floor as you bring the left hand towards the toes, or any amount in between there. Exhale to release. Inhale to lift up. Swinging around so you can extend that left leg long again. Centering yourself on your mat, and then either with your hands behind the thighs for leverage, or maybe with the legs extended and arms long. On an exhale, you're going to gently lower down one vertebrae at a time, engaging that core again. Slowly, shoulder blades, shoulders, and the back of the skull. Just breathe. Let the floor support you. And then before we get too comfortable and settled into Shavasana yet, we're going to slide the feet along the mat, knees coming up towards the ceiling. And then you can either keep your hands alongside the hips with the forearms really pressing into the floor for support. Or if, when you have your legs extended, you feel like it would be more comfortable for your low back if you had some support under your pelvis, you're going to slide your hands, wrists, and or forearms underneath your pelvis and gently rest your seat down. Now, before we go any further, if you're here, you're already getting a lovely massage on those forearms that we've been working so much today. Now, making sure that you don't have your shoulders or your shoulder blades hunched up near your ears, so you have that lengthened neck. You're going to inhale, and either one knee at a time or both knees, float the feet up, and then extend the legs up with the bottoms of the feet towards the ceiling. Legs up the wall. You are welcome to stay right here, which is a very restorative, healthy pose for us, either with your hands or wrists or forearms under your hips or not. If you would like just a little bit more core work, you're going to turn your feet out to make the letter V, so your heels are touching, toes are apart, and then squeeze the calves together, squeeze the knees together, squeeze the inner thighs together, and engage the core. On an exhale, lower the heels away from you, pausing at about 60 degrees. Take an inhale. Exhale, lower down to about 45 degrees. Take an inhale. Exhale, lower down to about 30 degrees. Take an inhale. Exhale, lower down so the heels are hovering off the floor. If you choose, maybe you tuck your chin in, gaze at your toes, keeping the shoulder blades down and back. Exhale to release the chin down. Inhale, float the heels up to about 30 degrees. Inhale, bring them up to about 45. Inhale up to about 60. And then inhale, legs up the wall. If your hands or wrists are under your seat, exhale to release them out. And from here, we're going to go into supine twists. Your option is to go into it from this straight leg variation if you know your low back is happy with that. If you are not sure, you're going to bend your knees and you're going to allow those knees to either fall open from here or lower your feet down and come into a supine twist from there. So 3 options. Choose whichever one is best for you. Inhale to prepare, and then exhale, lower to the right, legs to the right first, arms coming out as wings as you exhale the chin towards the left shoulder. And go ahead and close your eyes if that would feel good for you. Allowing the spine, gentle twist at your level. Allowing the floor to support all the parts of the body that are touching it. As we come out of the twist, you have the same three variations. Either just lifting the knees up with the feet on the floor, or floating the knees up with your feet floating, bringing the knees towards the chest, or on an inhale, floating both straight legs all the way up to center. And then exhale, whichever variation with your legs, you're going to lower them over to the left, arms spread out like wings as you bring the chin over towards the right. And then melt into the twist again. Lengthened inhales, lengthened exhales. Coming out of the twist in whichever variation is best for you, either feet on the floor, knees floating, or legs floating. On an inhale, lift them up. And then on an exhale, let's everybody meet with their heels towards your seat, pulling the knees in towards the chest, back into ball pose. You can keep the back of the head resting down, or if it would feel good to extend that spine one more time, maybe you tuck the forehead towards the knees, maybe you cross the wrists to grab opposite feet to ball pose. Exhale, release whichever variation you're in, lowering the heels and the feet down to the floor, and then allowing those legs to slide down and open. And then relaxing from the ankles and heels so the toes fall open, legs taking up space. Make your body big. And then arms, upper arm bones open to the ceiling so the shoulders can pull down the back and the chest can release and open. And if you want palms up, that tends to be a little bit more energizing and activating. Or you can pivot from the elbow and lower palms down, which tends to be just a little bit more grounding or calming. And then settling in. Slowly releasing any movement except for the breath. Closing your eyes if that's available to you. And comfortably, gently settling in to your body again. Using your breath, each inhale, cycling into each exhale as your focus point. So anytime any other thought might try to push in, any other care or concern might try to interrupt your attention or your focus, let it go. Don't attach to it. And come back to your breath just for these couple minutes. As you breathe, Notice if you feel any areas of tension remaining in your body. Utilize your breath as a tool to gently and slowly help to release some of that tension. Relaxing the tongue. Releasing tension out of the jaw and neck. You're welcome to stay in Shavasana for as long as your body is requesting it. Whenever you are ready to move on, start to bring small movements to the fingers and toes. Letting that movement move into the wrists and ankles, hips and shoulders. And then eventually inhaling. Maybe it would feel good to come into a long, extended stretch, fingertip to toe tip, reaching away. Take an inhale, and then on an exhale, move yourself over to your side body. Just pause for a moment to acclimate, no rush. Inhale to press the floor away, and all the way up to a seated position. Comfortable seated position for your body, either hands down on the knees, maybe the hands to heart center. Take a nice long full inhale, fill the belly. Exhale to gently lower the chin towards the chest. Blink the eyes open, and namaste. Thank you so much for being here again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.